Hi, I'm Eliane, and today I want to talk about chain piecing. You've probably used this technique before as a way to speed through a whole bunch of quilting elements as you're making your quilt top. But you can also use chain piecing as a way to construct entire blocks or even an entire quilt top. I really like to use this technique when I've created all of my blocks and I'm now ready to assemble them into rows to make my quilt top. It allows me to make sure that every block is in the right space, it's facing the right way, and then at the end, all of my rows are created, and then I can simply sew them together in the order that they're attached. Today, I'm going to demonstrate on a quilt block, but at home, you can definitely do this with a quilt top as well. I've put my quilt block on a piece of batting so that every piece is in the order that I want it to be. I'm going to start with the top left piece and take the first two on my top row. On my machine today, I have a regular piecing foot. I have some cotton quilting thread. Normally at home, I would use piecing thread, but just so you can see it a little bit better, I've put this thread in my machine. I like to start by putting a little mark on my first piece. I'm only going to do this for the first row, but it helps me to remember which side is my top left corner of my block or quilt top. I'm going to put the two together and sew them together like I would if I was chain piecing two pieces together normally. With my first two pieces of my first row sewn together, I'm going to leave my thread. I don't want to cut it because we're chain piecing, and I'm going to start by sewing the first two pieces of the second row. Now we're going to do the same thing with the first two pieces of the third row. My first piece is always on the bottom. My second piece is always on top. At this point, because I've finished all of the rows, my first pass around, I'm going to cut my thread and we're going to add our third piece to make our block. I'm going to scoot it back all the way to the beginning. And we're going to start again with row number 1. I know it's my first row because I can see the mark that I made before. I'm going to take the third piece in my first row and sew it on to the second piece of the first row. I'm going to do the same thing with the second row. And finally, our last piece to make our block. Since I've sewn all my pieces, I'm going to cut my thread again. And now I can open it up and look at what I've done. I have my star block, and all of my pieces are still attached together. This is really beneficial because now I'm going to take this and I'm going to go over to my iron and I'm going to give every row a good press. Because they're all still attached, I know that row number 1 gets sewn to row number 2, and I don't have to worry about them getting twisted around. So once they're pressed, I'll sew them together. If you're pressing your seams to the side, you can actually leave these little tails right in. And that's how you go ahead and you chain piece an entire block or entire quilt top together.